Yeah, good luck. Over to you.
Thank you. Let me start by sharing my screen. Can you see my screen right now?
Yes,
Yeah,
you
we
just
can see.
put that
Yeah.
in present mode and then you're good.
Okay. Can you see my?
Just sorry. Just before we start, I'd like to kind of say how happy I am to be here and talk to you guys. And also, if you have any questions to ask me about myself or Patamar, do feel free to do that or jump straight in onto the presentation. I work in Patamar, as you know. Patamar is an impact-driven venture fund based out of Silicon Valley, now investing completely in Asia. We have investments in India as well as Southeast Asia. We are fairly sector agnostic, so we have investments into agri-tech, as well as financial inclusion, health tech, edu-tech, pretty much a lot of sectors that you find across tech-enabled distribution platforms. We invest at pre-Series A up to about Series B, so our ticket sizes can range from $1 million to $5 million. We are also keenly interested to talk to investors early on at seed level, because we like to develop a relationship and then bring you towards Series A where we come in, or pre-Series A we have come in. So that's a quick snippet. Sorry to take your time away from your exciting story, but do ask me any questions or jump on straight on.
Definitely. Thank you so much for the information. I think I would love to follow up with you afterwards, since I know the time is quite tight with other presentation right after me. Can you actually see my full screen without like my notes blocking your way?
Nope, I can't see your notes, don't worry.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much for making the time. And my name is Singi Tark, and I am the co-founder of Bin Voyage. And I'm delighted to be here today to chat with you about the work that I'm very, very passionate about. So I wanted to start by asking a quick question to both of you. Have you had your coffee this morning? Or are you not?
I've had two, actually.
Oh, you have? I am on the same boat with you. I just had my 5th cup because it's quite late in Costa Rica right now. But yeah, and AJ, how about you?
Well, no, it's 8:30. I think Satya has had my one for me. I'll have it in an hour or so, though. I can't get through the day without.
Okay, but both of you are coffee drinkers. That's good to know. Another question: do you know that there's a high chance that your coffee today that you have drunk and then you are going to drink was harvested and produced by women coffee farmers by very, very high chance?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I come from Sri Lanka, and I know that 100%, almost 100% of the tea pluckers are women. So I have a fairly good understanding that coffee also probably is very similar.
Right, definitely. I think I'm with the right audience to talk to today. So yeah, I will start by telling you how we all got started at Bin Voyage. So for us, it all started when we met our first coffee farmer ever to know, Erica Mora, in 2016. Erica is a 3rd-generation coffee farmer in San Marcos de Tarazu in Costa Rica. And when we met her, she was a commercial coffee grower who didn't fully understand the quality of her coffee. In fact, she's never actually tasted her own coffee ever before meeting us. And she was also on the verge of selling a part of her coffee farm, as the economic conditions for coffee farmers have been dire for years. So coffee simply wasn't paying enough, for her families and, her needs for years. Upon spending extensive time with Erica and her family, and also conducting our own independent research on the side, we learned that smallholder women coffee farmers like Erica faced 2 big challenges. One was directly linked to price volatility and the way the C market is currently set up. And the second element was the gender part that we were very much touched upon. As you can see in this graph, coffee prices are very volatile. And I think you are familiar with the tea market, so you can also understand how there's so much similarity between the two industries, right? And just looking at coffee prices here, over the last decade, global coffee prices have also significantly dropped, where the prices fell from $3 per pound in 2011 to 90 cents per pound in 2019. So economic sense, like it just doesn't make sense because inflation and the cost of living and cost of productions have been going up, but the prices have been just not really reflecting those changes. And there was a series of research papers that were also published in 2019 to tell us that on average it cost about $1.40 per pound to produce a coffee in Latin America. So with the current market situation, the more coffee you produce, the more debt you're likely to get as a coffee farmer. During the same time, retail coffee prices have been rising. For instance, in the US, retail coffee prices have risen by 98%, while the prices for commercial coffee have actually dropped by 27% between the same period of 1982 and 2018. This is to say the values have been created for coffee through movements such as the specialty coffee industry. Nevertheless, the value hasn't been distributed across the value chain to reach the coffee farmers. And if you are a woman farmer, a female farmer, the situation is actually worse. This is a diagram created by the Coffee Quality Institute's report after surveying coffee producing countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. The report showed that despite making up to 70% of the workforce in coffee productions, often directly linked to qualities of the coffee, as you can see in the diagram, women were excluded from decision-making processes and lacked knowledge to access the specialty markets around the world. So as I was mentioning earlier, specialty markets is where the value has been generated, but women have been excluded from these markets for years. In addition to, I guess, moral and ethical reasons for why we need to work with women coffee farmers and focus on the smallholder women coffee producers across the world and their challenges, we saw the opportunity in the market. There's much room in the $100 billion coffee market to do the right thing for women in coffee. And I can show you a quick graph here that looks at how the coffee consumption has been increasing in different parts of the world. On the right side, you're seeing the traditional market, where coffee has been, I guess, like a staple drink for years. They have also been seeing growth over, 0.2%, 1.4% over the past few years. But if you look at on the left graph, the growing and the rising Asian market, the growth has been quite incredible. So this is a market that we've been recently more made interested in. And that's the reason why we also saw the value in coffee as a medium to eradicate the gender gap in farming communities.
Gotcha.
So we founded Bin Voyage in 2016 with the mission to equip smallholder women coffee producers to create their own path to sustainability. To do so, Bin Voyage provides training, market access, and distribution to put smallholder women on the right path through improved prices and greater agencies towards sustainability and sustainable future for their communities. And how do we do this? We do this by what we call the care trade. We believe that trade is more than an exchange of goods, but an opportunity for us to care about the producers and the planet that supply our favorite morning beverage, coffee. We offer 2 programs that strengthen the ability for coffee farmers to lead their communities toward a sustainable future. And they are, namely, Care Training and Care Market. Firstly, Care Training. Care Training is a 2-year training program consisting of comprehensive curriculum to improve farm productivity and coffee quality. Coffee producers, through our program, are equipped with tools and knowledge to transition from commodity production to specialty coffee. In 2020, we have fully transitioned to digital learning. So before 2020, we were doing all of our training in person. And in 2020, we introduced the digital learning element where the current curriculum consists of bite-sized videos from industry experts and interactive in-class activities delivered by trained local youth, which ensures accountability and real-life application. We use low-cost and high-accessible technology such as WhatsApp to ensure effective rolling out of our curriculum. Our second program is called Care Market. After producers go through the Care Training program, they can choose to sell through our direct market program called Care Market. It is a direct marketplace between our graduating producers and buyers of coffee, through which a fair price is negotiated and paid to producers, while enabling buyers to trace the origins of their coffee. This relationship-based and transparent trade model ensures improved profits for smallholder coffee families and leads to improved quality of life for their communities. So after joining our program in 2016, Erica was able to go from being a commercial coffee farmer that hardly knew much about her own coffee to a producer that understands and owns the process of sustainable production. So the picture that you see right now is a backyard of Erica's own house.
Right.
And she has also successfully conducted home-based processing for 5th year now. To be able to see her own bag of coffee exported to a roaster partner that she now knows very well and can speak to. So by consolidating the value chain and producing specialty coffee through receiving the right training and information, Erica right now earns $8.4 per kilogram of coffee. That is more than 200% higher than the fair trade market price that we see. So just like Erica and her family coffee business, our program also saw some growth since our founding in 2016. So in 2017, we prototyped our training program with 16 women coffee producers in one region of Costa Rica. And in 2018, we grew our program to work with 47 women from 2 regions in Costa Rica, and to grow our program in 2019 to reach 67 women coffee farmers from 5 coffee producing regions, supporting them to learn a little bit more expensive topics than now, to include financial management of their businesses and sustainable farm productions to be part of our curriculum as well. And over last year, we were able to go virtual with our training program and recruited 10 youth from coffee farming communities to scale our work, to work with over 200 women from 7 out of 8 coffee producing regions of Costa Rica. We are currently on track to recruit 300 new coffee producers in Costa Rica into our program for 2021 cohort and provide them with training on climate smart agriculture techniques and gender in community, because these have been quite important topics, especially in the most recent years in coffee. We've also grown our market program over the last few years. So in 2016, most of our coffee producers' coffee were not exportable. As you can imagine, agriculture takes a while for them to be able to, be ready for the market. And with our first significant export was actually in 2019. In 2020, we exported over 10 tons of coffee. And this year, we are currently closing the contracts for over 25 tons of specialty grade coffee with an average price of $4.7 per pound, which is 3 times higher than the current market price of $1.50 per pound.
Got it.
The major metrics of success, as you can see on our slides right now, are farm profit and gender agency. By closing the gender gap that exists in access to information and training, and by equipping smallholder women to produce specialty coffee, we increase farm profits earned by farmers. Through our training, we also saw participants feeling a greater sense of agency as they gain more access to training and peer support groups. Oh, sorry. Over the past 5 years, we've been recognized by leading organizations such as the Specialty Coffee Association, Facebook, and Wonyoung World communities for our innovation and sustainability-focused approach, especially around gender in agriculture. And we've been also fortunate to also receive financial support from foundations, governments, and corporate partners, as shown here on the presentation. During the time, our work has also been featured across industry-leading magazines such as the Barista Magazine, Perfect Daily Grind, and Coffee Monthly, and in several different languages, including Korean, Japanese, Dutch, Spanish, and English. So none of the work obviously would have been possible without the incredible team that I'm working with. This is our management team. Most of them are, actually everyone right now at this point is based in Costa Rica, while myself and my co-founder Abhinav travel between Asia and Latin America most of the time, trying to, focusing on our efforts to fundraise and build our market linkages. And we are the team that's responsible for many of the behind the scene work to make our programs work. And this is a group of the young leaders that I was briefly mentioning earlier in the slides. They are from 10 different farming families in Costa Rica that we've contracted to be able to execute our training programs that are currently being done virtually. We have also received the support from our board of directors coming from education, nonprofit management, corporations, and coffee consulting, as well as our board of advisors to dream together for a world where all farmers can thrive no matter their gender. Our plan for the next 3 years is to work with over 16,000 producers in 3 countries. We hope to grow our market presence in Asia, especially in Korea, Japan, and Taiwan, where we've seen the traction being quite rapid in the past few years, to scale our programs to ensure 3 times more income for 50 times more farmers in the next 3 years than what we've worked with in the past. With that, I would like to invite you to join our voyage as we dream for a fairer and a more equitable world together through coffee. Thank you so much for your attention and time, and I look forward to hearing your questions.
Thank you so much, Sungi. That was fantastic. That was brilliant. I'm gonna pass straight over to Sachit to kick off the questions now.
Yeah, Sungi, I think amazing presentation. I hear and I'm not saying this just to be nice. I hear at least 20 to 30 presentations a week on Deal. And I think it's an amazing presentation. I think it's a very strong story you have. The impact story that you have is good enough to any. I would rank it with any other impact story I've heard on any startup. So I think you nailed that. So I'm gonna ask you slightly different questions from the impact angle, because I think that's a perfect area for you. Is that could you tell me more about the monetization of your model? How do you monetize this model right now?
So currently our work has been primarily non-profit based work. And I think that's because most of our work so far has been focused on making the training program work and proving our prototype and kind of like defining our special sauce. And right now we are in our 5th year of operation, where we are thinking to actually grow our export program, which is only 2 years old at this point. So looking at the current financial situation will not necessarily be reflecting the one that we want to have moving forward. Right now, most of our work is actually funded through our corporate partners and foundations and governments. Only about 30% of our financing right now is coming through sales and earned income activity, like earned revenue activities.
Okay.
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
And I think moving forward, the way we monetize our the earned revenue, the way the earned revenue is earned for Bin Voyage is that we have a set commission. Currently, it's set at 20 cents per kilogram of coffee that we export that we are able to earn. And so far, the 25 tons have been quite an experimental amount, and we hope to grow that, I think, in tenfold in the coming years. For sure.
Amazing. I think that's the right approach, Sungi. The model that you're trying to grow with a very strong impact story is, in our words, we call this an aggregator model or a farm aggregator model, where you provide some kind of scientific farming tips and knowledge and educate the farmer on how to gain productivity and efficiency in what they do. And in your story, more importantly, connect them to a value chain rather than the supply chain that they were already involved in, right?
Right.
I think what's exciting with this model is also the fact that the other benefits that you can provide the farmers, and thereby also create monetization models. One thing that we're seeing across India, which is a slightly more mature market than Southeast Asia, is they're aggregating large pools of farmers and then layering financial services. So I'm sure that a lot of the women entrepreneurs that you work with and the women farmers that you work with have working capital issues, or there's input lending is a very strong avenue of growth And so these are, and sometimes crop insurance is something very attractive with microinsurance. So I think these are really exciting avenues that you can explore as you develop your farmer base. So I'm very excited for you in picking this model, which is both sustainable, impact driven, as well as something that you can scale. My next question to you is, as you now think through fundraising, would you say that you would still want to explore the grant and the corporate grants and avenue right now, and then go into more, VC type fundraising later on, or how do you see your growth process?
I think that's a really, really great question. I think for the past few years, we've been contemplating about maybe structuring our company in a hybrid model where we have a non-profit body that's solely responsible for the training, and that's funded primarily through grants, grant funding, as well as the earned revenue that the for-profit body will be able to plug into the non-profit body. So the for-profit body will be the one that's responsible for exporting. The reason why right now we are also quite, limited to be able to export a lot more coffee is because most of our grant funding is tied to programmatic elements. So we are not able to spend that money to be able to do marketing or to be able to actually transport coffee. So we are currently looking at the hybrid model. And for that, I think we are looking to find investment on that front.
No, I think that's, again, it's spot, you're spot on, right? We have a portfolio company by the name of Leaf, who's doing exactly the same thing. They have MasterCard that they've recently partnered with, and they're doing this hybrid model where they have been traditionally concentrating on educating farmers and improving the productivity, the efficiency of the farmers, and then taking that output and connecting them with the directly with the value chain or the more advanced buyers who give them a better margin, right? Which is a marketplace model. But exactly as you said, I think it's great to have the hybrid model where where you use your not-for-profit to aggregate the number of farmers and provide them scientific farming methods and education. And then the same aggregator is going to be of exponential value to you as you layer different products. It doesn't stop at I think the trade of coffee. It can layer on with other financial benefits that you can gain out of this. So I think, again, I think it's an exciting process. I think you've got the right path in how you're looking at this. Is there any questions that you'd like to ask me in any area that you feel that you need to?
Right. I think that's a very great insight that you shared. I think sometimes it also seems quite daunting to approach the VC area, having run on only the nonprofit elements for so many years. So are there any advice or tips on how to go about, transitioning from almost being fully nonprofit to becoming a hybrid? Where would you recommend that I start or we start at Pinbat?
I think the key for you to make that switch, Simbi, I mean, it's twofold. One is, as soon as you gain a large pool of farmers on your platform or whatever that platform is, right? It could be I think the next step for you, if you don't have a tech platform, like I think that could be a next step, because right now, and we could probably schedule a time where I could give my insights. I think where the VC money is flowing through is tech-enabled distribution platforms, right? So the minute you have an aggregator model of farmers on a tech platform, that platform has exponential value, because at that time, like when you told me, I'm like, oh, there's so many things you can layer on top: financial inclusion, lending, margin, input margins, etc., right? So instantaneously, you see you gain value as soon as you have an aggregator model of farmers, right? So you can then concentrate on your impact through your not-for-profit. And as soon as you have a tech-enabled platform that has 10,000, 25,000, 30,000 farmers, then you start being very, very valuable to VCs and very apt to talking to VCs. So that would be the short answer in 2 minutes. But I could talk to you for 45 minutes on the kind of models that we see and what's working in Asia. And I think I would finish off by saying this is the right timing for Southeast Asia and South Asia, because this is the time where internet penetration is just crossing that 50% mark in most Southeast Asian countries, which means that now the farmer has access to tech, right? As soon as that happens, that means they're more savvy with platforms and they can start using a platform. That's when VCs get excited.
Absolutely. That's something that we've been talking a lot about. I don't know if you know, but I lived in India for 5 years and my co-founder is from Nepal. So we've been actually exploring the options in the two locations. So I'd love to touch base with you in the near future, because I know I'm running out of time. So shortly jump out. But thank you so much for all your feedback and for both of your attention and time. I would definitely love to get in touch with you after the
call. Drop me a line and let's connect and talk about these models more.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. That was fantastic.
It was a pleasure talking to you.
Take care.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your time. Bye.
You too.
Hey there.
Got an additional investor in the corner. You're going to use all your pocket money. So do you want to have a few moments just to kind of jot some notes down, Satchith, while I get Net and Julie in the room so that they can set up the slides?
I think I've got my notes already. So if you want to just let her in.
Let them in. Okay, brilliant. That sounds good. I'll do that now. Hi, Julie.
Hello.
Hi, Net. Apologies about the extra investor sitting on me.
Keeping it real.
Exactly. It's one way of putting it, that's for sure. Really lovely to see you both. Thanks for joining. If you want to get your slides up just while maybe Satchith introduces himself and Patamar, and then we can get going. Really good to see you though.
Thanks.
Let me do a very quick introduction of myself. I'm so glad to come on board and help out LSE alumni and speak to you guys. Very exciting times for me. I'm based out of South Asia. I'm supposed to spend a lot of my time in India, but right now I'm based out of Colombo. I'm Sri Lankan, by the way. I work for Patamar, as you know. I had investments in South Asia for Patamar, and also get involved in deals in Southeast Asia as well. So Patamar has investments in India as well as Southeast Asia. We are fairly sector agnostic. We invest in health tech, edu tech, agri tech, and a lot of financial inclusion. We've now done across about 3 to 4 funds right now. Our current fund, we just closed our current fund, and our ticket sizes are around $1 to $5 million. Usually we come in at pre-series A, and then continue on to series B to series C. So yeah, that's a short snippet about us. If you have any questions, please do ask me, or we can jump on straight to your story, which is the more important thing.
Well, yeah, we've definitely had a look at the website and it looks super cool. And thanks so much for sharing and letting us kind of come to pitch today. I guess we could jump right in, and then Julie and I can talk about the team at the end as well.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Good luck.
Perfect. So I'm Net and this is Julie. We are the co-founders of Isla and the creators of Ally app. And since you mentioned you're from Sri Lanka and this is such a global call, I'm from Bangkok, Thailand, where I'm based at the moment. And Julie is currently in her hometown of Paris, France. So very, very international indeed. What is Ally? So we're hoping to turn local stores into safe spaces for bystanders and turn bystanders into allies. And I'm sure that, with the pandemic, you've heard that there's been kind of a rise of domestic abuse, right? But the thing is, if you get down to concrete numbers, every 3 months of the lockdown, there's actually 50 million new cases of gender-based violence. And the UN Women have actually dubbed this as a shadow pandemic, which a lot of people kind of forget is happening behind the scenes. And it's not just the UN, actually. It's a lot of news sources and a lot of private sectors who have taken notice. And sadly, the issue of gender isn't restricted to one geography. It's a problem that can be seen from places like India, Singapore, as you can see here, all the way to the UK itself, where calls to domestic helplines have increased by 120%, which is insane. So what is our insight and what can we do to help? We realized that we needed to actually get bystanders involved. Now, a wrong assumption is that victims usually need to help themselves or they can't get help because they don't know the numbers and they don't have the resources. But they can still go out and about to certain places like supermarkets or pharmacies, right? So essentially retail stores. But from talking to the survivors, the number one reason that they couldn't get help was because they lacked a support system. And if you train bystanders to help, they are going to feel more confident. In fact, 89% are more likely to intervene. And if you put 2 and 2 together, you get us realizing that what if we train and equip retail store members to recognize signs of abuse so that they can redirect victims towards help? And thus became Ally and what we're doing right now.
So Ally is an application that is both a training and a safety tool. So let's look at how it works. The people we're targeting with Ally in the first place are actually retail staff, retail stores and their employees, because these are the places first that are the most available around you and also that remain open even during a lockdown. So it can work during a pandemic, it works outside of a pandemic, but it's quite handy. So here we have a character called Tanya and she's in an abusive relationship. What happens when you're in an abusive relationship is that your movements and your trips are kind of restricted. There are not many places where you can go to. This is even worse during a lockdown, but this is happening already even without a lockdown. And some of the places you can go to most of the time are local stores. Now, Kim works at a local store and her shop could definitely be a safe space, a place where Tanya could speak to people and get help without having to fear her partner. Now, Kim has been equipped with the Ally app that has been training her to recognize signs of abuse, but also to safely and efficiently redirect victims towards help. And because she has been equipped with Ally, when Tanya will head into her store and either ask for help, either be spotted, she will be able to receive the support that she needs and efficiently be connected to all partners that are organizations working in the field. Right? So this is what Ally looks like from the perspective of Kim, who's a retail employee, right? So when she connects with her company's login, she gets to start training. And this is where she accesses different modules on domestic abuse, but also street harassment so that she can also help somebody who would rush into the store to be safe. She also can hear stories of survivors and other allies that have already helped people and how it feels and explain like their experience on it. So she can both connect to a wider community of allies, but also really get into the mindset of what somebody needing help, especially in the case of domestic abuse, might be feeling and better understand how she can help and why she needs to act the way she's recommended to. She also has a take a break session that is dedicated to mental health. So this is because what we have realized is that this time of pandemic has been extremely stressful for retail employees. And handling a situation such as a survivor entering a store is also extremely stressful. So there is a place for them within the app to potentially check in on their mental health and even reach out to their managers if they think they're being overwhelmed and they need additional support. And the managers themselves have specific training within Ally to support employees who are feeling overwhelmed after referring somebody. And last but not least, you have the Learn More section that is not illustrated here, but this is basically just to know who's behind Ally. So what is Ally, who we are, but also who are our partners, who are the NGOs working in the helplines. So how do we make the difference with LI? Well, one thing is something that actually Ned touched upon, which is innovating in the way we're replying to domestic abuse and gender-based violence in general. So we're not targeting the survivors, we're targeting the bystanders, because we think that these are like the missing link so that the support system with like the police and helpline actually becomes efficient. And if you look at the competition right now, there are 327 gender-based violence apps, so apps trying to solve the problem of gender-based violence. What we have not written here is that 45% of them only have an emergency button, when we know for a fact that the problem is not accessing information or knowing the numbers, but rather actually getting the right information and support to escape. And 0 is focused on allyship. So 0 is trying to train actual people who could help. But this is not the only thing that Ally is doing. We're also inspiring trust. In 2018, 64% of customers were basing their purchases on the brand stance on social issues. And the pandemic has shown us that customers are expecting their stores to be even more connected to their communities, so that the physical retail still makes sense, right? They want to see the impact of a brand. They want to know that the brand cares about them and cares about the people as well and the planet. So this is what Ally is also doing, like is also like reassuring that customers know that the brand care and helping brands impact their communities. And finally, we ensure safety. So of course, one of the main things with Ally is to guarantee the safety of customers in need, but also of the employee who's supporting as an ally, and of the entire company when they're supporting, so that they're actually like complying to any legal requirement that would be related to this kind of cases. Oops, and now it doesn't want to go to the next slide. Here we are.
So how does this translate into impact? I personally love this slide because it always makes it so much clearer when you put everything on a map. So if you're taking the example of Bangkok, Thailand, specifically Thonglor, which is a very popular kind of CBD area, we look at, for instance, the number of police stations there are right now, and there are 2. But if you look at supermarkets, there are 10. And if you look at coffee shops, that's another 20 places. And this is just supermarkets and coffee shops. I'm not even covering the rest of retail or physical stores like banks, pharmacies, all of that. You can imagine the number multiplying even more. What we've done here essentially is, if all these stores or the majority of these stores have the Ally training and have the Ally app as part of their program, we have already increased the number of safe spaces that survivors can get help and report abuse without fear, because they know that these are Ally stores. You know, the way that climate change has become such a trend now, and you know, if you go to a certain store, this store is like plastic free, or this store doesn't, you know, do recycle, or this store does recycling. That's how we want to behave with gender. We want to make sure that this is a safe space for domestic abuse or for survivors, for anyone going through any kind of street harassment. So this is kind of the vision. And from what Julie said, you know, if all of that is implemented, this is what success looks like for us. So it's helping the community, first of all, by creating social impact for survivors and the business, but it's also helping the customer experience. So people like me or you, or even potential victims, feel like they know that this place is a safe space and this is an Ally store. So obviously, you know, it'd be nice to have a little sticker outside the physical store to recognize which stores are which. And last but not least, we've actually asked the people who are going through this training. We've talked to them, we've talked to retail staff members and done our homework, and 90% of them said that they actually wanted to be Ally certified, even if this was not mandatory training. They actually wanted to help and kind of bring out their community.
So where are we now? So we started working on Ally actually during the pandemic in April 2020, when we pivoted quite a lot. So long story short, Ayla had a different activity before the pandemic, and we were actually meant to launch our activities in India, where we have been working with survivors of gender-based violence. And this is also why we know quite what we're doing with gender-based violence. And so we began working on Ally because we knew that we needed a way to still impact survivors, especially during a pandemic, without being able to be physically there for them. So between June and October, we did our research, we interviewed survivors, we partnered with NGOs, and we started creating a prototype that was out end of October. With this prototype, from November to March, we did our user testing, feedback and integration, but we also started talking to potential clients. And the interesting point is that we started having a really good traction and really big names being interested in Ally. So we've been in discussion for several months now with Mark and Spencer in the UK, with Avon, with Louis Vuitton as well, both in Paris and in the UK. We had randomly somebody from like even Mali that got in touch. And if we keep going now, we're in April, we are working on the MVP that actually is coming out by the end of the month on the App Store and the Google Play Store. And we still are talking to different clients and getting traction. So we've been talking to FedEx, Starbucks. In Thailand, we're talking to the Central Department Store, McDonald's in Singapore, Cashflows in the UK, and Hindustan Unilever that we have already collaborated with in the past. So, and this is the go-to-market. So Ayla is a UK-based social enterprise. So we want to pilot and do the monitoring and adapting in the UK. That is kind of an easy market for us to access to, where we already have a network. But then we also have a network in India and in Thailand, as we mentioned it before. So the aim for us is to test and adjust with the pilot in the UK, fix whatever needs to be fixed in a cultural context that fits Ally extremely well, and then bring it to other cultural contexts that don't need that much adaptation. So Thailand would definitely be one, Singapore would be one. And then as we're going, we're hoping to adapt and to go to even more markets. So for example, I mentioned we have a lot of presence in India. We have a lot of partners as well already in India. India is a harder market to get to, but we know also how to adapt and tweak Ally, which will be a mix of working with like private sector, like places like Zomato, for example, and also working with NGOs that have access to a bigger pocket of the population. That's the base of the pyramid. And we do have the NGO partners who are happy piloting this with us as well. So we know that basically by tweaking and finding the right clients and partners, we can bring Ally to every layer of the population in every different cultures. And this is an app that you can easily tweak to different cultural contexts and backgrounds. So that's the plan, basically. Aiming for the world, starting with the UK, continuing with Thailand, definitely aiming for India, where we already have partners. And this is the fund ask. So right now we're pretty early stage, as you can see, and we are aiming to raise 150K GBP. So the way we're breaking down this amount and the way we would use it, of course, you have the cost of development for Ally that are around 45K to basically bring the whole vision to life. But then, maintaining the team that is working on Ally, building the content, which is around 65K. But then one place where we'd like to really put more investment would definitely be the sales. So you can see the size of the retail market. It's huge. There are many potential clients that we could tap into. And so we would like to increase the team from the sales side so that we can really tap into this opportunity better. And this is how we want to actually grow the company now.
Great. So to wrap up, I'll just talk a bit about, life pre-pandemic and also what we've been doing early stages of COVID. So the brands that we have worked with a lot are based in India and Thailand and the UK. You see LSE is on there. Julie mentioned Unilever from India, and also UN Women, which is who we collaborate a lot with in Thailand and who one of my main partners here are. But we've also worked with a lot of other private sectors as well as these NGOs. So Mumbai Smiles, Ali from India, but Solace is in the UK. So very global, and we have to make sure that we have both a mix of public and private sectors, and that's how we've always been working, and that's how Ally, can exist. And finally, you get to the team. I did promise we were going to end with the team. So Julie and I met at LSE, as you, well, maybe you don't know, but now you know. And we decided to start Ayla. But Julie herself has more of a development background. So she's kind of the gender expert. She does a lot of the content for the app, and she is the one who heads up our impact partnerships. Whereas for me, I come from a marketing behaviors change background, and I've been working a lot on employee engagement programs, specifically to do with CSR. And that's kind of how we make that bridge between employees and retail with the app. And Nilomi joined us to kind of head up business development and finance with her finance background. So that makes up the core team. And then we have a little bit of people on the side who always help us with communications, with legal advice, because it is a safety app. Professor Harry Barkema is a professor from the London School of Economics, and he sits on our board. And we have James, who is the developer for the application. So kind of a good team, at least we like to think so. And happy to answer any questions, but that's basically it from us.
Thanks, that's absolutely fantastic. I've noticed Anne has just entered the room as well. So, Sachit, if you want to introduce Anne and introduce yourself, and then open the questions.
Great. So, guys, Anne is my colleague who is based out of Vietnam. She also happens to be LSE alumni and spent I think close to about 5 years working in London. I might be just making that up. But yeah, I'll let Anne drop a line about her and make a quick intro.
Yeah, hi, it's actually very nice to see a lot of LSE faces, which I haven't seen for quite a while. Yeah, so I'm Anne. I'm currently based in Vietnam, and I'm responsible for the South Asian investment out of Patamar Capital. So from my LSE history dated back to 2009 when I was doing a Bachelor of Science in Econ. And then I worked for around 10 years afterwards in London. So total time was roughly 15 years. Really miss London now, given how things open up. I think, first of all, after listening to your pitch, the fact that, first, I have to say, I really like the idea, but the fact that we actually have to come up with an app like this saddened me somehow, because I can see there's real market demand for, proper training to deal with domestic abuse, which a lot of people do not have. So I'm very intrigued by the idea. I think probably to kickstart a Q&A, I would like to understand more, because with startups, the idea is to build to last, so build to sustain. So what exactly, can you tell me a bit more about your revenue model, how you're looking to fund yourself in the long run?
Perfect, because the very next slide is exactly on this. Great, we anticipated, so we didn't want to bore you with these, numbers in the actual presentation, but it's going to be a B2B application, and as you can guess, retail is the client. So for us, we've kind of divided it into small, medium, and large. And full disclosure, we're quite new to large enterprise sales, so we're still working a lot on the sales cycles and kind of getting the nitty-gritty numbers down, but this is primarily what it looks like. So we're going to be working sort of like on a subscription basis, think Netflix, but this is kind of the pricing model per employee, per retail location that we're having. And if you have more than 20 locations, i.e. Tesco's, Marks and Spencer's, then that's going to be subject to another price review based on customization costs, because the application, we might have skipped over it when we were showing you the entire UI UX, but the cool thing about the app is that you can actually customize scenarios to match different retails. So the scenarios that are, for instance, specific to Marks and Spencer's would be in Marks and Spencer colors, and the training staff and scenarios would be in their logos, and the shop store would look exactly like a shop store within Marks and Spencer's. So these kind of little tweaks will be the customization costs, but these are kind of like the baseline costs that we're going with.
Yeah.
So just quick questions to clarify. So when you say per retailer or per retail location, does that mean every single employee working that retail location will have to receive the training in order for them to be qualified to put up the logo? Because one thing I'm quite concerned is that, typically with retails, we see quite high turnover in terms of employee. So how are you looking to deal with that?
Yeah, so so basically per retail location, you have a set amount of licenses that are available. And when one employee leaves, you can still have give the license to the next one, taking the phone or taking the post. So this is how it would work. So we do sell licenses per head in bulk if you want, rather than have to count exactly the number of employees. And this is how it works. So one license can be transmitted to somebody else in the course of a year. It's just having access for one person during 12 months when you pay for it. And if somebody leaves after 3 months, then you take over the previous license. So we can reset the app, reset the training, signify that it's a new person taking it, and the same license goes on. This is how it works for the turnover. And we do have, this will be kind of a side effect of AI, but we do hope that with both the mental health component and the learning and development, the app will contribute to reduce, hopefully, the turnover rates, because we know this is also an issue right now for our clients. But of course, it remains retail for sure.
With the annual subscription fee or generally the subscription business model that you're targeting, there's just one piece of advice, which I think typically companies try out a service. If after 30 days, if you decide to take the service away, and the company scream at you, no, I want you to give it back to me. This is really helpful because it has demonstrated value proposition to us, then they will keep paying for your service. But if after 30 days you take the service away and they say, okay, fine, we can live without it, that means they do not value their service that much. So I think the key to convince any big retailers or small retailer to adopt Isla will be, it's really for them to see that demonstrated value proposition. So how your product will make a difference to them. How would it add revenue? It's really sad because they probably wouldn't care so much about the impact that we in this part of the business care deeply about. The companies and retailers to say, okay, how much revenue will you be able to bring me, or how would that accelerate my brand power, etc. So I think this is the key, which hasn't come out quite clearly in the pitch, which you might want to consider further.
Yeah, I think just to add on to that, I think from an impact point of view, I think it's an amazing initiative. I think the vision is very clear. In fact, my wife is a psychologist who works in the UN, and she'd love this pitch for the same reasons. I think what I would like to also understand is and also ask you guys is from a value proposition point of view, and I think we call this the acquisition model, right? Right now, your customer is the small, medium, and large companies, and to have a foolproof acquisition model, you need to clearly define what the value proposition that you offer a small company, a medium company, and a large company. And those value propositions could be very different, but it's essentially what you are marketing and saying, hey, Marks and Spencer, if you have us on, this is what you gain out of having us on. And the stronger that is, I think the stronger your acquisition model is, and then the bigger base you have, and that increases the value of the company of Isla. So just wanted to understand if you guys have mapped that through, or is that something that you guys are in the process of doing?
So you're talking about the kind of like the value for the businesses, right?
Yes. So what would be the value for a small company on having? I understand the impact point of view, but I'm from a purely from a business point of view, when you're pitching, what would be that value proposition?
So
is it brand recognition, or?
So I don't know what slide this is, Julie, but it's our like make a difference slide. I can go into it. We can go into a bit more detail.
The blue one or the success? This one or the one before?
The one before.
Okay. Oops, here it is.
Yeah, so I would say that maybe for sure we can definitely make this stronger, but it's I would say these are the kind of 3 pillars that we're looking at when we're talking about what the businesses actually get. So the whole impact, the innovating for impact side, I think we all agree that there's clearly a help here for the society and gender-based violence survivors. But I think if you're speaking specifically for the actual business and the employees, it would be the inspired trust and ensuring safety. Ensuring safety being probably number 1 from the conversations we've been having with all the people that we mentioned, whether it's the retailers themselves or the employees themselves. And it's quite interesting because I will use Marks and Spencer's as an example. So earlier this year, there was actually a case with a woman who was sort of murdered walking home in the UK. And then what happened is all the supermarkets and retail stores actually released a statement on their LinkedIn, on their social media saying our store is a safe space. So they already know that there's a need here from them. And they already kind of put themselves out there to say that they want their stores to be a safe space. And that's actually one of the reasons we got talking to a lot of these companies and brands, because they themselves actually put this statement out, and we're realizing that behind this statement, there's not much going there's not much backing that up. You know, you can say that your store is a safe space and the intention is there by a lot of companies. And I'm sure like if any of us had stores, we would want our store to be a safe space. However, how do you actually make that happen? What is the concrete step? And the step is that you need to train your people to be able to handle these situations. And so for us, the ensuring safety part is super key. Safety for retail employees, but also safety for any customer who's coming in. And I think that is definitely one of the strongest value propositions for us. But you're definitely right, we can kind of make this stronger, I think, when we're talking about it for sure.
Yeah, and I would maybe just add to this, which is that if you go down like to the nitty-gritty thing, Inspire Trust is a marketing game. So how do I gain customers, and how do I still make sense after a pandemic where basically people can either order from me online so they don't move, or go to like a local store that's way more ethical than I should be, or I can be, or I look like. So we've been saying this with the marketing thing because the statement they put was kind of marketing, but then they had a backlash online. Market Spencer was one of the brands that got a backlash with people saying like, you're not doing anything. So we actually got the meeting with them being in a rush of being like, okay, so now people are actually asking for actions beyond marketing. And whenever we publish anything on the app on our social media, and we do have quite a small social media, but like every post that we make on this app gets like 4 to 5 times more traction than any other post we make on any other topic or number we share. So the demand and the marketing interest for stores in terms of gaining clients, gaining trust, gaining loyalty is really clear. And then the ensure safety is kind of like the negative nudge, which is that after the pandemic, they also start having a backlash in terms of how they're managing their people, how they're supporting their staff that has been going through a lot, and how they handle a breakdown of either a customer, either a staff member within the store, which they have been really, really bad at because they have put systems in place. But, Ayla, aside from building Ayla, was also an EDI company. So we work with HR, and we know that HR are really terrified with the idea of having to manage a breakdown within the store, being from staff or customers, because they absolutely have no clue on how to manage it. And Ally brings this down as well. So this is also preventing them from actually being embarrassed or being in trouble because they can't manage the safety of people within the store. And in terms of cost, last but not least, the idea of Ally is to reduce the turnover and to really upskill employees so that it's actually cheaper to keep them than to fire them. Because right now what's happening is that when an employee is stressed or not able to deal with the customer, they would rather change the employee, like keep going with the turnover and hire somebody else. But in this case, Ally will make it cheaper to keep somebody who's already been trained in store rather than having to hire somebody else and adapt the person to the store again.
Great. I think that was clear. I think from an investor point of view, as you go through the fun part of fundraising and pitching, I think from our perspective, I think as an impact venture, I think there's 2 battles you guys are fighting, right? One is the impact driven to make your product a foolproof impact venture, which is actually socially and improving that product or providing impact, social impact. And the second part of it too is what's as important to an investor is how am I going to get what are my IRRs? What are going to be my multiples, right? And I think that's where you need to also spend a lot of time perfecting your product in how am I driving value and how am I continuously improving to drive value to my customers. And in this case, your customers are the small retailers to Marks and Spencer. And the more you add to that value, the faster you are going to grow as a base of we have X amount of retailers and corporates on our platform. And that's going to be more than valuable for us as an investor. So I think that's the part that needs constant improvement. And the higher you gain in terms of that market or that aggregating of retailers, the larger brand you're going to have. So I think that's the part that I think you guys need a bit more work in our perspective in kind of proving to investors that this is a investable model and it's the social impact is the impact on profitability, and to make this a profitable venture is as strong as the social impact that we all agree on. Anything to add to it?
You know, I think you summarize it very nicely. You know, in the world of social ventures, what it will be more tricky for you guys as a social ventures founder is you need to have both a warm heart and a very cool head. So the warm heart to come up with, you know, a real project that will drive social impact, but the cool head is to really talk to investors and talk to the business who will be your clients eventually and who care more about the monetary aspect and the financial returns rather than the impact you're making. But you really have to balance both of them. And if you can, then you can drive your business to success.
Thank you. That's actually a very helpful phrase to carry on.
Thank you both, and well done, guys. That was absolutely fantastic. And we'll send over some further feedback after the session as well. But thank you so much and well done. It's great to hear about the progress just from our side as well, seeing where this began and where it is now. So congratulations.
Thanks, guys. If you want to reach out to us anytime, please do feel free to.
Thanks.
Great.
We just leave the room now. We're good. Okay. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, Dad. Thanks, Julie.
Bye. Hi, Anne. Really nice to see you as well. Just wanted to say
Nice to see you.
Thank you so much for joining, because I know that, as Sajid said, you guys are super busy at the moment. So thank you.
No worries.
So I think Dennis is in the waiting room, so I'm going to bring him in. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. Hi, Dennis. How are you doing?
Hey, good morning, right? Yes, that took me a second. How is it?
Yeah, it's good. I'm in London, so it is definitely the morning here. And these guys, I think it's around lunchtime. Is that right?
It's definitely past lunchtime for us. We had lunch at like 11:30 a.m., but it's round about lunchtime for me. So
It's tea time for me. It's tea time for me.
Sort of Vietnam and time. I'll give you a quick snippet of so we're both from Patamar. Anne heads Southeast Asian investments for Patamar, and I look into South Asia investments, and I do also help the team with Southeast Asian investments, where we primarily invest from pre-series A to series B, so our primary ticket size is around $1 to $3 million. We're fairly sector agnostic, although we have quite a bit of investments in financial inclusion. We also have investments in agri-tech, health tech, edu-tech, et cetera. So that's a quick summary of us. If you do have any questions, please do ask us, or we're ready to jump onto your story, which is more important.
Thanks, Sajid. So Dennis, if you want to share your screen, if you want to show some slides, and then take
Great.
Go into questions straight after.
Will do. Perfect. All right, just to confirm, can you see my slide deck now? Perfect. All right, then let me get started. So thanks for the opportunity, first of all, of course, very much appreciated. So let me explain a little bit what CMC Plan is all about, what we do and what we envision. So first of all, as you see there, our tagline, once in a lifetime, every time. That's quite important because what we are aiming to provide is a quite unique service, something quite special, yet something that becomes at a certain level very accessible. Now, what does this mean? It means, first of all, that through amphibious seaplanes, we redefine arrival and departure. Essentially, it makes an experiential offering, not just transportation. We offer essentially new sightseeing adventures and unlock a lot of new destinations. But with that, it's not just for tourism and travelers, and that's really important because when we look at this and when we increasingly talk to various stakeholders in the country here in Thailand, we see how much of a game changer this will be for accessibility overall. Then we talk about delivery of crucial goods. We talk about things like medical evacuations that with any other means of transportation right now is significantly more difficult. And if it's more difficult, then we can have, you know, a major impact in changing this. To us, things like comfort and hygiene and safety go without saying. It's a standard. And similarly, sustainability is something that we built in from the start. And so we say we're sustainable by design, starting with carbon neutrality, and more to come. And I will explain that. We haven't launched yet. Our launch is at the end of this year. But as a company, we've been operating since about a year and a half, actually closer to 2 years now. And that is, of course, because this is a highly complex business that requires a significant amount of development and effort to start. So what are we looking at? Number one, we're looking at a big market opportunity. I will show what that means. We do expect that within 5 years, we can have a revenue of 44 million, which is less than a third of what the revenue potential can be. The profit margins are healthy because at the biggest share of the business, it is a premium product. The business model has been proven in other markets, and I can show you some examples. And from an investor point of view, there is a good multiple over invested capital, as well as dividends that deliver from the first year of making profits. Overall, the confidence that we have in the business, the confidence that we have in the growth, is based on what we call our detailed takeoff plan, which is a plan that comprises essentially all of our development efforts, including thousands of pages for our operation manuals, as well as commercial commitments. And these are, of course, quite important as we are, strictly speaking, pre-launch, pre-revenue. We have great support from the government. And while it's been an incredibly complex journey to walk, we've spent this last year and a half primarily just on that, ensuring that we work closely with the government, ensuring that we collaborate with the government, and ensuring that in that collaboration we address the risks, we identify the risks, and we show how we can mitigate them. And so just to give you that one example here of the governor of the tourism authority, who sees us as a key component of actually the whole recovery plan for Thailand. And as you may know, Thailand depends for nearly a third of the economy on tourism. And so this is vastly important, especially now in the days of COVID, when there's practically no international tourism. Our key value proposition is about connecting remote getaways. It's about making it easy to get to locations that are currently very, very difficult to reach. And so, of course, here we're looking at a lot of time savings. On the right, you get a bit of an idea just of the geography of Thailand and just how many potential vetted locations there can be for us. And on the left, just to give you, again, a sense of what this time saving means, an example of traveling from Hua Hin, which is the west of Bangkok, to Koh Kood, which is all the way in the east of Thailand, a beautiful island that actually I'm on right now. It would typically take a day with various means of transport. With the seaplane, it's about an hour. We do that with the Grand Caravan, which is the aircraft of choice for us. It's amphibious or amphibian, which means it's both for land and water. It has both the floats and the wheels. The beauty of the Caravan is that it's extremely versatile. It can be reconfigured actually within minutes, which allows even within one day to serve different purposes, such as standard flying, VIP flying, but also things like cargo or medical evacuations. At the same time, it's spacious, it has comfortable seats, so really it can serve this premium purpose of almost competing with a private jet, yet, of course, at a fraction of the cost. It's configured in such a way that there is social distancing, which in these days, of course, is incredibly important. And so that means for COVID times, it provides now a very interesting alternative. Lastly, the Caravan is cost efficient, and so that means for us as a business, we can have healthy margins. We can run this in such a way that even when not every single flight may be fully loaded with 8 passengers, which is not a lot anyway, that we still can ensure that there is a margin. That as we want to support other areas in the country that aren't just about premium tourism, but are about more the accessibility, more the development component, that we can still do that within the profit margin. And lastly, and importantly, it's more environmentally friendly than any alternative already by design. And I will explain in a minute what we mean by that. And even then, when we go into a 5-year plan, we actually can talk about full electrification, which is already commercially being tested. Tech is equally important. And so we have what we call digitally native setup. We already have our apps on the App Store where we start doing educational campaigns, where we provide information, and where we promote our partners, which are a lot of the luxury resorts and hotels. But of course, also on the back end, when it comes to the operations, and that's very, very important, tech is a big enabler. And so that will be ultimately a cost saver and an efficiency driver, where we can make sure that the flight planning works, that the charter rates, that the load factors, that the tracking of the GPS in remote locations, that all of that goes basically as a standard. Overall, it's a proven model. Now, I don't expect you to be able to go through this table in 10 seconds and understand everything. What it shows here is that throughout a number of countries, the model of a premium seaplane operator works. It delivers good revenue, it delivers good revenue per plane, and in fact, if we focus on just as one example on Trans-Maldivian Airways, it actually also has a nice story of an exit valuation of $600 million US. Now, granted, that's just on the luxury tourism side. Granted, that's just one country. And what we're looking at in terms of our business is, one, not just luxury tourism, but a much wider market. And two, in fact, what we're looking at is more markets than just Thailand. And so that's the opportunity that we're looking at. For Thailand, an annual serviceable obtainable market revenue potential of more than 160 million US, largely driven, as I've mentioned, by the tourism, but in mind with other segments, of course. There's no competitor in Thailand right now, given the regulatory complexity, which we have, as I've mentioned, worked on for the past 1.5 years with significant support and actively in the licensing process, and many approvals already from various authorities, such as environment, such as marine, and others. Hotel owners are desperately waiting. We have more than 20 luxury hotels that already have signed either MOUs or actual agreements with us. Next, as I've mentioned, we have a sustainable development vision. And so from the start, we want to ensure that as we're building this, we're not just yet another airline, we're not just yet another contributor to the problem that already exists, but rather we solve it from day one. As I've mentioned, we see COVID as an opportunity, in fact, changing travel habits, but also in terms of what the government and what many of the, especially in the hospitality sector, see changing, a changing landscape overall. Operationally, we have partnered with Tropic Ocean Airways, which is a US operator that has been doing this for over 10 years. So there is a strong expertise in how to run a seaplane business, really in depth and in detail. They have a gold rating in safety. They have, I believe it is a 97% 5-star review on TripAdvisor. And so they're bringing together not just the safety, the standard, and the hospitality component, but really ensuring that all of that works. And they've brought seaplanes to various Caribbean countries where they hadn't had any seaplanes before. So again, that regulatory component of what it means to build this up from scratch is there. And lastly, as I've mentioned, we're looking at regional expansion. And so really to go scale, to go beyond Thailand in markets where it can equally make sense in slightly different ways, but has similar potentials. There are markets like Indonesia with huge logistical issues. There are markets like Malaysia, But even, for example, a market like Bangladesh, where we've had actually conversations with several potential partners and conducted an in-depth feasibility study for the opportunity there. The business model is, when you look at from the top left down, the white boxes, first of all, of course, tourism. Tourism makes a lot of sense. Tourism is easy, and tourism is the primary margin driver. But tourism also is the primary marketing driver, because this is what makes the image, this is what makes the business out there, and this is what people talk about. Corporate, similarly, there's a lot of demand for corporate and executives in the country to go from A to B much quicker. And then additional services that are perhaps less sexy from a marketing perspective, but perhaps a lot more important from an economy perspective. And this is government and public services. We have, for example, the Department of Coastal Resources that would like to use seaplanes instead of large vessels on the water to monitor various locations across Thailand. And of course, we can talk about special projects, logistics, medevac, film, events, and so on. Very quickly to talk about the price, $250 per guest or $1,500 charter per flying hour. This is not a cheap price, but it cannot be. The economics otherwise don't make sense unless subsidized by the government, right, to make that work. And that's why I'm saying the tourism is the margin driver for this. This allows the business to operate completely. We primarily rely on B2B partners. Luxury resorts, as I've mentioned, we have over 20 agreements. We have a strong sales funnel. We have pre-commitments. And again, that allows us to have confidence in the launch that we make money from day one. And in fact, near profitability from day one. Not quite, but it comes fast. And of course, additionally, through our apps and so on, we can have our own B2C channels as well. Now, very quickly, let me explain a little bit about environment and sustainability, and then we can move also to a discussion. So in terms of emissions, by design of the engine, there is significantly less emissions compared to regular conventional aircraft. The CO2 reduction is significant because we cut travel time and because we reduce the modes of transportation needed otherwise. Because of the design of the seaplane, there is no fuel or oil spilling. And when it comes to noise, surprisingly to many, it's actually not loud at all. Plus, we don't have to go all the way to the beach. We can stay a little bit further away just to make sure that we don't interrupt in any way with any kind of noise disturbance. And you see on the right there, in terms of levels of decibels, it's nearly at the very bottom. It's much, much less loud than a jet ski, for example. Also important, there is no propeller in the water, and so it's actually, again, much safer even than a boat. The float immersion is only 60 centimeters, and so there's no risk, very minimally a risk of collision with any underwater marine ecosystem. And that's why we have the full support from the Ministry of Environment, where we don't need any additional environmental impact assessments, any additional studies that would show or prove or otherwise change their mind in terms of environmental impact. That's just the start. What we're then looking at is 3 phases of sustainability to say, okay, in phase 1, right now, as soon as we start flying, we compensate for even the very little CO2 that is emitted. We do that by supporting local development initiatives such as turtle conservation, coral planting, and other local foundations. This is done following standardized methodologies for calculating the CO2 emissions. Phase 2, biofuels. Now, biofuels are theoretically already available in terms of the technology, however, not yet here in the region. We believe that within 2 years that should be feasible, and there's different options, and we have different partners that we have initial discussion with around how can that look like. This, by the way, of course, can further reduce the greenhouse gas emission by quite a significant amount. And phase 3 would be the full electrification, where we're talking with Magnex, again, a tech leader in this space, to fully retrofit the existing airplanes with electric engines. Now, this is currently already being tested commercially. However, the range is still quite short. And so we believe that within around 5 years, we could think that for our kind of range, we're aiming up to 1.5 hours flying time on average, that this would be feasible. And then we have a much, much more sustainable alternative that can, in fact, take these things as a major component and as a leader even in the region. A little bit about our team, just to give you a sense. I'm actually a co-founder and the chief business officer. My background is not in aviation, but in banking, consulting, and then in tech. I've done a couple of startups before in different areas. I'm a private pilot, which led me to the project. My other co-founders are Leo, our COO, who has had a full background in aviation as a captain for big airlines, also in management, together with Fabrice, who's on the maintenance side, again, full aviation background. And then together with Jörg, our CEO, who's been in a couple of different businesses and working closely with the government, and is our Thai CEO. And a strong advisory team for most notably with Yochai and Lauri, who are both big airline founders and CEOs. Sarinya, who's an owner of several luxury hotels in Thailand, and so comes really from the hospitality industry. And Krishna, who comes from a different business background with, again, a kind of luxury business background, but also an aviation consultancy in Thailand. And so that gives us a very strong link in the local, economy with the government and with various other counterparts. And we have a team of now 14 staff for anything from finance to sales and marketing and technology, digital design and operations, of course. That already includes 4 commercial pilots so that we, in theory, can be ready to fly very, very quickly. Okay, I'm going to wrap up. I think I'm probably already over time. So just give me 1 or half a minute to give you a sense of the numbers. Our ambitions are large, right? So we want to scale fast, but of course, with a reasonable mindset. And so when you see here a few of these numbers, for example, key metrics, you see that aircraft, year 1, we start with 2 aircraft. We have access to the fleet of Tropic in the US, so getting these aircraft over is quite easy. The aircraft don't need to be acquired outright. So we don't have high capital expense, but we do financial lease. And with the financial lease, it means the payments are spread out, but from a balance sheet perspective, the assets are actually ours. And so in terms of valuation, that's of course great, but from a pure cash flow perspective, we can easily manage the scale. The unit economics overall are very, very healthy. And again, that's because it's driven by essentially what is a premium product. And so that means when we're looking at per flying minute or per passenger, that we have a profit margin of around 25%. Customer acquisition cost is low because we rely on our B2B partners, and they advertise seaplane flights to their existing customers. So we don't have to build a brand all the way from scratch and invest heavily into marketing. And then overall profit for regular flights and VIP charter flights develops over the course of 3 years into very, again, healthy margins. So with that, let me stop here. I'm a bit over time, I believe. And of course, I'm sure if you have questions on any specific of the elements, I'd be very happy to answer. And again, of course, I can also send you over this deck for a bit more in-depth study. So thank you very much, and would be happy to answer anything.
Thank you. And I'm going to pass straight over to Satchit and Anne for questions and comments.
Yeah, thanks, Dennis, for sharing. First of all, well done on the pitch as well as the business idea. I think it's a solid business model that you have here, and definitely just judging from the amount of time and effort you spend into developing the product, and also thinking about the business model, it's really well-rounded. I'm sure that, and also the fact that the team and the well-rounded expertise of everyone, you have already set the right foundation for this business to be successful. Now, the only areas where I'd like to point to is quite funny on the slide of regional competitors that you listed out. So what my closest friend is actually the CEO of Hio Aviation in Vietnam. also a seaplane operator. So she was the CEO between 2014 and actually 2018 before she left to set up her own business. And I remember vividly from conversations with her, the key operational challenges that she had at the point was, first of all, to secure new flight paths, regulatory and safety compliance. That was a real issue for her, even though that the business was backed and even got angel investment from certain government officials. But when actually you have to plan the air time, the flight times, and the route, it took a lot of time for her to launch a business. And in the meantime, that put quite significant pressure on cash flow management, because on a monthly basis, you have to pay the lease. So one word of advice that she shared with me at the point is you need to plan multiple scenarios, because things do not always go as planned. If it does, then perfect. The business will be fantastic, but you really have to plan because it's quite impossible to guess how quick you can secure and launch a new route. The other element is also on marketing expenses, but I see that you have already thought carefully how you want to work with the B2B partners and distributors. So I think that's all okay. But yeah, that's just the key point I just wanted to highlight.
Thank you. No, it makes a lot of sense. Maybe I can just very quickly react to the what you've mentioned on Haiao. I fully agree. So there goes significant complexity into the planning, right? Especially when capacity and load factors every single day are important. So to us, that's why we've started a lot of pre-planning, right? A lot of development ahead of launch. I mean, again, for the last year and a half already, but a lot of it going into getting commitments and strong partnerships, right? That's why we work so closely with the resorts, because that commits and gets us a certain level of flights, a certain level of minimum, load factors, for example. And so any new route that we would open, any new location, even though we've pre-planned already on actually a significant amount of locations where we have partners signed up, we need to ensure that there's enough commercial demand, first of all, before we would then consider flying there. So well taken, and I think it's very fair. And I believe that we have factored that in our planning for preparations. Yeah.
Dennis, I think I echo Anne's thought. I mean, great pitch. You've obviously nailed this part. Obviously, you've got a lot of experience in pitching to investors. What is your kind of vision for fundraising with this? Are you going into kind of VC investors, or are you going into investors? What's your plan?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I didn't directly address it in the pitch. So we've raised basically two small-ish rounds before, with the last one being just under 700,000 US. That was concluded quite recently. Now, what we're looking at, and so the investors in there were all by and large private individuals. In one case, it was an investment company of a high net worth individual, but it's still very much driven by the individual, right? Not a VC as such. And what we're looking for, so two things: one in terms of amount of money, two in terms of type of investor. Type of investor, we believe VC could be a very good complementary addition, because it gives another edge, it gives another focus, I think, in terms of especially the numbers and the scalability. On the strategic side, right, when it comes to connections, when it comes to approach, when it comes to hospitality partners, operation partners, we're good. We know the landscape, we know the people. Of course, it can always be better, but we're very, very comfortable. When it comes to the rigor, right, of a VC, I believe that can be a value add. When it comes to another point, sustainability, also we can be stronger. We've started recently with the last investor to push that a lot more because we realized just how much of a bigger story that is for us and how much more impact we can have with it. But I believe, again, we can do more on that. Now, the amount that we're actually looking for now to do the final push towards the launch and the initial setup of the initial growth would be between 1 to 1.5 million. And so that's the kind of amount that we feel is right, that enables a very comfortable launch, but also in the event of contingencies, in the event that the even conservative scenario planning on day one does not hold true for whatever reason, or in the event that there is a delay in launch, and again, for whatever reason, we need to wait it out for another 3 months, even 6 months, that is fully covered. And that's important there. We can manage our cost very flexibly, which means we don't have to get the aircraft, for example, until we have certainty on the launch. And so that's important because we don't want to waste, our money, investor money, to say, okay, let's just get the aircraft now and then wait and see what happens. Yeah. So there's time there's a flexibility to maneuver around that.
No, I think those are some great points you made. I think there are some businesses that screams out VC investment, and there's some businesses that don't. And that doesn't mean one is better than the other or not, right? I think this business is the risks doesn't scream out VC because if you're looking at a VC investor, that means a higher risk. I think someone with this business has, I would say medium or lower risk compared to a typical VC investment. So I think it's entirely up to you where you want to play. Do you want to play with the VCs, or do you want to delay that and have other investors come in? I think that's my take. I don't know if Arthur agrees with me on this, but I think that's where I am with this. I think this business is quite solid enough for you not having to break your neck attracting VCs is my take on this.
You almost make it sound bad to go with VC. No, but I understand your point and risk, on the risk and multiple level, right? So that's why I do think right now is still an opportunity. I do see value and the existing investors sort of also from a, let's call it, portfolio perspective of investments agree on that, right? So we do feel that could be right. We do feel the scalability is there to offer the right kind of potential multiples that would be interesting for VC. But in the next step, right after launch, it will not be a VC game anymore, because then we're looking at a very kind of different thing, right? At a much lower multiple, much more secure business, valuation much higher because all the assets will be in our books. But we're just before that, and that still is, to me, the opportunity for VC. Yeah.